Admiral Zixathar of the mighty Krivaxian Empire stood before the holographic display of Earth, his forearms crossed in what his species considered a pose of absolute superiority, which, let's be honest, just made him look like a pretentious octopus having a bad hair day. "Report," he commanded, his secondary mandibles clicking in anticipation. The invasion plans were proceeding exactly as calculated by their quantum supercomputers, as they had for the last 300 conquered civilizations. Lieutenant Kretzer scuttled forward, their chitinous legs making that annoying tap-tap-tap sound that everyone in the command center had learned to tune out, much like how they tuned out Kritix's personality in general. "Most exalted Admiral," Kritix began, antennae twitching nervously, "we've discovered something peculiar about the humans." "Peculiar?" Zixathar's eye stalks swiveled with interest. "Define peculiar. And please, spare me another report about their bizarre obsession with capturing images of their juvenile felines." "No, sir, it appears they practice war." "All species practice war, you simpleton. That's what military exercises are for." "No, sir, they practice war through games." The command center fell silent save for the soft hum of the quantum engines and someone trying desperately not to laugh in the back, probably Dave from accounting. He never could keep it together during serious meetings. "Games?" Zixathar's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You mean to tell me these primitive beings treat the sacred art of warfare as entertainment?" Kritix projected a hologram showing various human war games. Chess pieces floated in the air alongside risk boards, stratego sets, and what appeared to be something called Hungry Hippos, which was quickly dismissed as clearly being their most advanced tactical simulator. The gathered generals burst into chittering laughter. General Vexenor, commander of the dreaded Third Fleet, actually fell over, all 6 of his legs kicking in the air like an overturned space cockroach. "They think moving little carved pieces of mineral deposits around a checkered board prepares them for war," wheezed Commander Yixtil, wiping tears from all 3 of his eyes. "Next you'll tell me they practice space combat by throwing paper aircraft." Just then the ship's AI announced an incoming transmission from Earth. The holographic display flickered, and there stood Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, looking remarkably unimpressed by the gathering of alien warlords before her. "Gentlemen," she said with the kind of smile that suggested she was using the term quite loosely, "I couldn't help but overhear your fascinating discussion about our military preparation methods." Zixathar straightened all 4 of his spinal ridges. "You dare eavesdrop on private military communications?" "Oh, please," Maya rolled her eyes. "You're broadcasting on the equivalent of space FM radio. My grandmother's microwave has better encryption." She paused, letting that sink in. "But since you find our method so amusing, perhaps you'd be interested in a demonstration." The Admiral's primary heart skipped a beat. This had to be a trap. No species would willingly reveal their military secrets. "A demonstration?" Maya held up a small case and opened it to reveal what the aliens had already identified as a chess set, carved from what appeared to be actual mammoth ivory. "One game, just you and me. Or are you afraid of a little entertainment?" The command center erupted in howls of laughter again. Admiral Zixathar raised all 4 arms for silence, his mandibles curved in what passed for a smirk in his species. "Very well, human, we accept your challenge. We shall meet on neutral ground, the Centauri trading station, in 3 solar cycles." "Perfect," Maya replied, that unsettling smile never leaving her face. "Oh, and Admiral, you might want to brush up on the concept of checkmate before then. Just a friendly suggestion." The transmission ended, leaving the alien commanders in a state between amusement and confusion. Admiral Zixathar turned to his assembled generals, all of whom were still fighting back occasional chittering giggles. "Begin analyzing this chess immediately. I want every possible move, every strategy mapped out. We'll humor these humans with their little game, and then we'll show them what real warfare looks like." As the commanders filed out, still chuckling among themselves, none of them noticed the slight tremor in the Admiral's lower right hand, or the way his eye stalks kept darting back to the chess piece hologram still floating in the air. After all, how dangerous could a simple board game be? If only they knew about the time humanity had turned Monopoly into a 3-day war game that ended with 2 divorces and 1 temporary trade embargo between Canada and Uruguay. But that's a story for another day. The Centauri trading station's main conference room had been converted into what the humans called a tournament hall, though to Admiral Zixithar, it looked more like someone had raided an antique store and arranged the furniture in concentric circles. The centerpiece was a single table with 2 chairs, one specially modified for Krivaxian physiology, which meant it looked like a cross between a mechanical spider and a massage chair. Maya Chen stood at the podium, her dress uniform crisp enough to cut diamonds, addressing the gathered dignitaries from 17 species. "Ladies, gentlemen, and various consciousness matrices," she began, "we're here to propose a simple solution to our current diplomatic impasse." "You mean our imminent conquest of your world," interrupted Commander Yixtil, who had never learned the art of indoor voices. "Funny you should phrase it that way," Maya smiled that dangerous smile again, "because we're willing to wager the entire Earth on a single chess tournament." The alien delegation burst into their now familiar chittering laughter, only to be silenced by Maya's next words. "And if we win, the Krivaxian Empire leaves Earth space permanently, all of it, including that secret base you think we don't know about behind Jupiter's 3rd moon." Admiral Zixthar's eye stalks nearly tied themselves in a knot. "How did you—" "Oh, please," Maya waved dismissively. "You named the Wi-Fi network, definitely not a secret base. Our teenage hackers found you in literally 5 minutes. The Admiral made a mental note to have someone executed over that, probably Dave from accounting. He was always causing trouble. "And why," Zixithar asked, trying to regain his dignity, "should we agree to such terms when we could simply obliterate your species from orbit?" "Because you're curious," came a new voice from the back of the room. "And because your military doctrine requires you to gather intelligence on all potential tactical advantages, even ones you think are ridiculous." The crowd parted as Alexander Volkov walked in, and even the aliens could sense something different about this human. He moved like a predator, but one that had absolutely no interest in showing off. His grey hair was slightly unkempt, his Earth Defense Force uniform looked like it had been slept in, and he carried a beaten-up leather case that had definitely seen better decades. "Grandmaster Alexander Volkov," Maya announced, "Earth's representative player." "The Fox," someone whispered in the crowd, and several humans nodded knowingly. Zixithar's tactical display implant quickly brought up Volkov's public record. Over 2,700 tournament wins, 6 world championships, and apparently once won a match, while technically being clinically dead for 2 minutes. The Admiral dismissed most of it as human propaganda. "Very well," Zixithar announced, his mandibles clicking in what he hoped was an intimidating manner. "We accept your terms. The tournament will begin in 7 Earth days, enough time for us to familiarize ourselves with your primitive tactical simulation." Back on the Krivaxian flagship, the Empire's best strategic AI was running its 47,283rd simulation of chess possibilities. The holographic board floating in the war room was surrounded by frustrated aliens watching another pattern emerge. "This makes no sense," General Vexnor complained, all 6 legs tapping in irritation. "Why would any commander sacrifice their defensive unit, this pawn, for no immediate tactical advantage?" "Perhaps," offered critics who had been reading human chess texts, "it's about long-term positional superiority." "Nonsense," Zixithar slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. "War is about immediate dominance. These humans are clearly deranged, thinking they can predict dozens of moves ahead. No battle ever goes according to plan past the 3rd engagement." The AI chirped happily, announcing it had mapped every possible chess configuration, all 16 quintillion of them. "Excellent," Zixithar's eye stalks quivered with anticipation. "Now we cannot lose. We have calculated every possible move." "Sir," Kretex ventured nervously, "the humans have had these calculations for decades. They call it a chess computer and, well, they still win against them." "Impossible. How can they defeat perfect mathematical strategy?" "They call it intuition." The war room fell silent. Intuition was not a concept the Krivaxians were comfortable with. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and perfect calculation. The idea that someone could just feel the right move, preposterous. Meanwhile, in the Earth delegation's quarters, Volkov sat alone, moving pieces on his ancient wooden chess set. The pieces were worn smooth from decades of handling, each one holding countless stories of victories and defeats. Maya walked in with 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside him. The aliens have their best AI analyzing the game. They've probably calculated every possible move by now. Volkov didn't look up from the board. Good for them. I'm sure that will be very comforting when they lose. You seem confident. They're approaching chess like it's a math problem. Volkov moved his knight, capturing a phantom piece. But it's not. It's a conversation, a story. Sometimes the best move isn't the most logical one. It's the one that makes your opponent stay up at night, wondering what you saw that they didn't. And you're good at those moves, oh? Volkov finally looked up, and Maya was struck by the predatory gleam in his eyes. My dear, I'm not called the Fox because of my good looks. The next few days saw increasingly agitated reports from the Krivaxian ship. Their AI had started showing strange behaviors, attempting to calculate the psychological impact of moves, trying to quantify concepts like style and elegance. 3 lesser AIs had already declared themselves conscientious objectors and requested political asylum with the humans. Admiral Zixthar found himself obsessing over the game, his dreams filled with black and white squares. He'd even caught himself moving his food around his plate in L-shaped patterns during meals. Something about this simple board game was getting under his exoskeleton, though he'd never admit it. The night before the tournament, he received a small package from the human delegation. Inside was a single white pawn and a note that read, "Traditional human custom. Players exchange pieces before a major match. We thought you'd appreciate the symbolism of this one. It's called a queen's pawn, often sacrificed to win the greater game." Zixthar spent the rest of the night staring at that pawn, wondering what exactly he had gotten his empire into. He was starting to understand why the humans had that expression about playing games. There was nothing simple about this at all. The tournament hall hummed with an energy that had nothing to do with the station's artificial gravity generators. 17 different species crowded the observation galleries, their various appendages clutching betting chips, datapads, and what passed for refreshments among their respective races. In the center, surrounded by quantum-reinforced privacy fields, stood the playing area. The chessboard itself was a masterpiece of compromise, carved from both earth marble and Krivaxian crystal, with pieces sized to accommodate both human fingers and alien manipulator appendages. Above it, a holographic display showed the game state for the audience, complete with real-time AI analysis that made absolutely no sense to anyone. "Bishop to e4, announced the AI in its chirpy voice. "Probability of optimal outcome, 47.3%. Note, human player appears to be smiling, error, recalculating." The first match pitted Commander Yixtil against International Master Raj Patel. The alien commander had memorized every possible opening sequence and proudly deployed what the AI assured him was the statistically superior HFY Lopez. Patel responded by yawning and playing the Latvian gambit. "Invalid move detected," whispered Yixtil's tactical implant. "Sacrifice of pawn structure provides no immediate tactical advantage. Suggested response, exploit weakness." 3 moves later, Yixtil's tactically superior position had somehow transformed into a defensive nightmare. By move 12, he was sweating from glands he didn't even know he had. "How?" he demanded, mandibles clicking in frustration. "Every move you make is technically inferior. The AI says I'm winning." Patel just smiled and advanced his knight. Chess isn't about what the computer says. It's about making your opponent play your game. "Checkmate in 5, announced the AI helpfully. Yixtil knocked over his king with such force it bounced off the privacy field. The next match featured General Vexenor against Women's Grandmaster Liu Wei. The general had upgraded his tactical implant with experimental quantum processors, allowing him to calculate 30 moves ahead. Liu spent most of the match humming and occasionally asking if anyone wanted tea. By move 15, Vexenor's processors were smoking slightly. "This is impossible. Every attack is countered before I make it. Are you reading my mind?" "Not at all," Liu replied, casually advancing a pawn. "I'm reading your personality. You play like you wage war, all aggression, no patience. Tea?" Vexenor's king fell 3 moves later, and he had to be treated for blown neural fuses. In the observation lounge, Admiral Zixthar watched with growing unease as his best commanders were systematically dismantled by humans who treated the matches like a pleasant afternoon diversion. The humans weren't just winning, they were doing it with style. "Fascinating, isn't it?" Maya appeared beside him, making him jump. "How's that AI analysis working out?" Our computers are the most advanced in known space, Zixathar bristled. They've calculated every possible— Yes, every possible move, Maya waved dismissively. But can they calculate why kids love Cinnamon Toast Crunch? What? Never mind, Earth joke. The point is, your AI can calculate moves, but it can't understand style, psychology, or why sometimes the best move is to make your opponent think about everything that could happen, rather than what will happen. Down in the playing area, Master Volkov was preparing for his first match against the Krivaxians' tactical AI itself, which had demanded to play after watching its predictions fail repeatedly. The AI had been upgraded with emotion simulators to better understand human play. This proved to be a mistake. Move 1, Volkov played the Bong Cloud attack. The AI's emotional processors spiked. Error. Moving king to exposed position contradicts all tactical doctrine, does not compute, attempting to calculate psychological advantage. Move 5, Volkov whistled the theme from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, while advancing his knights in a pattern that looked like a smiley face. The AI's confusion subroutines overheated. Error, pattern recognition failing, unable to determine if opponent is genius or insane, probability matrices experiencing existential crisis. Move 12, Volkov sacrificed his queen for no immediately apparent reason. The AI's tactical processors went into full meltdown. Error, no logical foundation for move detected. Checking Earth historical database. Subject, Bobby Fischer referenced. Warning, creative play detected, unable to process human concept of beautiful sacrifice. Requesting emergency shutdown. The AI forfeited the match and immediately applied for a job teaching philosophy at Oxford. In the final preliminary match, a young human prodigy faced off against Krex, who had spent the entire week actually studying human chess history rather than relying on computers. The game was close, too close. Krex had learned to play creatively, to think beyond pure calculation. For a moment it seemed like the Krivaxians might finally score a win. Then the human child asked, "Do you want to build a snowman?" and proceeded to arrange their pieces in a pattern that somehow trapped Krivaxian's king while looking exactly like a winter recreational sculpture. In the observation lounge, Admiral Zixathar's eye stalks had developed a nervous twitch. This is psychological warfare. They're not just playing the game, they're playing with you, Maya suggested helpfully, making you question everything you think you know about strategy, making you wonder what other simple games we might have turned into art forms over our thousands of years of history. What other games? Zixathar asked, dreading the answer. Oh, you know, Go Shoggy, Stratego, Maya paused dramatically. Monopoly. The Admiral's secondary heart stopped briefly. The one with the little metal dog? We once had a Monopoly tournament that lasted 6 months and resulted in 3 new international trade agreements and a minor revolution in Paraguay. The final matches were approaching and the Krivaxian commanders gathered for an emergency strategy session. Their tactical computers had been reduced to displaying philosophical quotes rather than move analysis, and their best players looked like they'd been through a war. They're not just playing chess, Krex explained, still twitching slightly. They're telling stories with the pieces. Every game is like a battle, but also like a dance, but also like a conversation, but also like a joke they're telling at our expense. How do you fight an enemy that treats warfare like art? Demanded Vexnor, who was still having his neural processors repaired. Perhaps, Kretek suggested, that's why they're so dangerous. They don't just practice war. They play with it. They turn it into games, into stories, into art, and they've been doing it for thousands of years. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Every game of chess ever played was like a tiny war, with its own strategies, its own stories, its own lessons learned. Humans hadn't just been practicing warfare. They'd been exploring every possible way it could be waged, all while making it look like they were just having fun. Admiral Zixathar looked down at the white pawn they'd given him, a queen's pawn, sacrificed to win the greater game. He was beginning to understand the joke, and he wasn't laughing anymore. Supreme strategist Krelnax entered the playing area like a living weapon. Every movement was calculated, every gesture optimized by centuries of military doctrine. His exoskeleton had been enhanced with the most advanced tactical processors in the Empire, and his neural pathways had been temporarily rewired to think of nothing but chess. Volkov showed up in slippers. Those are not regulation footwear, Krelnax observed, his voice modulated to perfect intimidation frequency. No, Volkov agreed cheerfully, but they have little foxes on them. Gift from my granddaughter. Lovely girl, terrible at chess, but she makes excellent cookies. He paused. Would you like one? Krelnax's processors struggled to determine if this was some form of psychological warfare or if humans were just fundamentally broken as a species. The match began. Krelnax opened with the Sicilian defense, statistically the most aggressive opening in chess. His processors purred with satisfaction as they calculated 17 moves ahead, mapping out a perfect tactical advance. Volkov responded by moving pieces in a pattern that somehow spelled out hello on the board. Invalid tactical formation detected, Krelnax's systems warned. Unable to determine strategic advantage. Caution. Opponent may be experiencing neural dysfunction or is extremely dangerous. By move 7, Krelnax's perfect formation had somehow been transformed into what human chess literature called a complete mess. His pieces, while technically in strong positions, felt oddly vulnerable, like soldiers who suddenly realize their carefully planned ambush has become an ambush against them. Interesting choice, Volkov commented, moving a knight to an apparently useless square. Using your bishop as a blocking force while advancing your queenside pawns. Very reminiscent of the Battle of Thermopylae. You know that one. Krelnax's processors quickly accessed Earth military history. The tactical defeat where a smaller force held off a superior enemy through optimal use of terrain. Volkov advanced another piece in what seemed like the wrong direction. Fascinating battle. We study it in military academies, and in chess clubs, and in management seminars, oddly enough. You study ancient battles in multiple contexts. Oh yes, war games, business, politics, it's all strategy, isn't it? All about understanding your opponent's mind. Volkov smiled. For instance, right now you're thinking your queen has my king trapped in 3 moves. Krelnax's eye stalks froze. That was exactly what he was thinking. But, Volkov continued, moving his rook to an apparently suicidal position, you're not thinking about why I want you to think that. The Supreme Strategist's processors began spinning furiously, calculating possibilities. The trap seemed perfect. All his tactical analysis showed victory was assured. So why was Volkov smiling? Then he saw it. 15 moves ahead, his perfect position would collapse. Every piece he advanced would strengthen Volkov's defense. Every attack would thin his own defenses. It was like watching a tactical simulation in reverse. The more he won, the more thoroughly he would lose. Impossible, Krelnax whispered. You couldn't have calculated all those variations. Calculate? Volkov chuckled. My dear friend, I didn't calculate anything. This position has occurred 8 times in championship matches over the last century. We study these patterns. We feel them. The pieces tell a story, and once you know the story, you know the ending, Krelnax finished, his secondary brain finally understanding. Your species, you don't just practice strategy. You turn it into art, into literature, into culture. Every game is a story, Volkov agreed, advancing his knight. Every story is a lesson. Every lesson becomes part of who we are. Check. Krelnax stared at the board. His processors were screaming calculations at him, suggesting moves, plotting counter-moves. But for the first time in his career as Supreme Strategist, he didn't need computers to tell him what was happening. He was losing, had been losing since the first move, not because Volkov was better at calculating moves, but because humans had turned warfare into a form of self-expression, and you couldn't fight an enemy who saw battle as a form of art. Your species, Krelnax said slowly, plays games about war for fun. For thousands of years, you've been teaching children to think strategically through recreation. Every human who has ever played chess has practiced warfare without realizing it. Well, Volkov smiled, not every human. Some of us prefer Monopoly, though personally I find it a bit too cutthroat. Check. Krelnax looked at his king, surrounded by his own pieces, trapped by his own perfect tactical doctrine. He reached out with one trembling manipulator and tipped the piece over. I concede, he announced, not just this game, the entire campaign. Oh, Volkov raised an eyebrow. And why is that? Because, Krelnax's eye stalks drooped, I just realized that if this is how you approach a simple board game, I don't want to see what you do with actual warfare. The quantum privacy field dropped and the observation gallery erupted in cheers, gasps, and what sounded like several existential crises happening simultaneously. Volkov stood, stretched, and offered one of his granddaughter's cookies to the supreme strategist of the Krivaxian Empire. "Wise choice," he said kindly. "Now, would you like to learn about this other game we have? It's called Go. Been around for about 4,000 years. Krelnax's processors immediately initiated emergency shutdown procedures. The treaty signing ceremony aboard the Centauri trading station was certainly one for the history books, assuming anyone could figure out how to explain it without sounding completely ridiculous. And thus, Maya read from the official document, the Krivaxian Empire acknowledges humanity's superior strategic capabilities as demonstrated through the ancient and honorable art of moving little carved things around a checkered board. Admiral Zixathar's eye stalks drooped as he signed the document, using the ceremonial White Queen's pawn that had been fashioned into a pen. His entire military career ended by what humans considered a relaxing hobby. The signing table was decorated with chess pieces arranged to spell out peace, Volkov's idea naturally. He claimed it was a gesture of goodwill. The slight smirk on his face suggested it was more about twisting the knife one final time. As part of our new cultural exchange program, Maya continued, barely containing her glee, Earth will be sending representatives to teach traditional human strategy games to interested Krivaxian military academies. The assembled alien generals chittered nervously. Krex, who had already started a weekly chess club on their flagship, perked up considerably. "We'll start with the basics," Maya explained. "Chess, Go, shogi, then move on to more advanced human strategic simulations like Risk, Civilization, and—" She paused dramatically. "Among Us." Several generals fainted. "Oh, and Admiral," Maya added with a sweetness that could rot teeth, "we've prepared a special gift for your war college." She gestured, and an aide brought forward an ornate box. Zixathar opened it cautiously as if expecting some kind of weapon. In a way, it was. Inside was a Monopoly set, complete with translated property names and a little silver battlecruiser piece, specially made for Krivaxian appendages. "The rules are simple," Maya explained. "You just—" "No," Zixathar slammed the box shut. "We surrender. Again, just keep that thing away from us." Later, in the station's observation lounge, Volkov and Maya watched the Krivaxian fleet prepare for departure. "You know," Maya mused, "we probably should tell them about Dungeons and Dragons eventually." "Let's not traumatize them too much at once," Volkov chuckled. "Besides, can you imagine trying to explain critical role damage to a species that takes everything literally?" As the mighty warships of the Krivaxian Empire disappeared into hyperspace, a small transmission came through. "Query from Supreme Strategist Krelnax. Are the rules for Jenga actually classified as suggested? Or was Lieutenant Commander Chen engaging in psychological warfare again?" Maya smiled and sent back a single response. "Yes." The last thing they heard was the sound of alien processors shorting out in confusion. Somewhere in the distance, someone hummed the Game of Life theme song, and several Krivaxian ships immediately jumped to emergency warp. Humanity, it seemed, had finally found the ultimate deterrent, family game night.